Let me tell you something that most people spend their entire lives running away from. Not because they don't know it, not because nobody ever told them, but because the truth when it comes to this particular subject has a way of making a person deeply uncomfortable. And most human beings, given the choice between comfort and truth, will choose comfort every single time. That is precisely why most human beings never become what they were capable of becoming. That is the great tragedy of the modern age. Not poverty, not lack of opportunity, not bad luck. The great tragedy is the gap between what a person could have done and what they actually did. And almost always, when you trace that gap back to its origin, you find the same culprit sitting there, fat and satisfied, right in the middle of a person's potential. That culprit has a name, and the name is laziness. Now, I want you to understand something right from the very beginning of our time together today. I am not here to make you feel bad about yourself. That is not the purpose of this conversation. The purpose is to wake something up inside of you. Because here is what I have come to understand after decades of studying human behavior, human achievement, and the philosophy of success. Inside every single person on this earth, there are two forces at war, two competing versions of who you are. There is the person you could be, the disciplined, focused, ambitious, purposeful version of you that gets up early and works with intention and builds something worthy of this one short life you have been given. And then there is the other one. The one that rolls over when the alarm goes off. The one that says, I'll start Monday. The one that convinces you that you deserve a break even though you haven't done anything yet to deserve it. That is your lazy self. And until you decide to go to war with that version of yourself, nothing in your life will fundamentally change. Let me give you a philosophy to carry with you. The lazy self is not the real you. Let me say that again because I want it to sink into the deepest part of your mind. The lazy self is not the real you. It is a habit. It is a pattern. It is what happens when no one holds you accountable and no standard is demanding your best. The lazy self is the default setting that life reverts to when discipline is absent. It is not your identity. It is not your destiny. It is simply what happens in the absence of decision. And the moment you make a real, firm, unshakable decision about who you are going to be, the lazy self begins to lose its power. But here's the problem. Most people never make that decision. They make wishes, they make hopes, they make vague intentions. I want to get in shape, I want to start a business, I want to write a book, I want to change my life. But a wish is not a decision. A hope is not a commitment. And until intention becomes decision, nothing moves. The lazy self lives and thrives in the land of intention. It is perfectly comfortable there. Because in the land of intention, nothing is required of you. You can feel good about all the things you are planning to do without ever actually doing them. And that feeling, that false sense of momentum, is one of the most dangerous traps a person can fall into. I have seen it over and over again in my years of work. People who attend seminars and leave feeling energized only to go home and do nothing with that energy. People who read books and highlight every page and never implement a single principle. People who write goals in January and forget them by March. And every single time, the same enemy is responsible. The lazy self won that round. It always wins when you are not deliberate. It always wins when you leave the outcome to chance. It always wins when you believe that feeling motivated is the same thing as being disciplined. Let me tell you something important about motivation, something most people get backwards. Motivation is wonderful. I love motivation. But motivation is the spark, not the fire. You need something that keeps burning after the spark fades. And what keeps burning is discipline. What keeps burning is commitment. What keeps burning is a made-up mind that says no matter how I feel this morning, no matter how tired I am, no matter what excuse presents itself, I have decided who I am going to be, and today I am going to honor that decision. Now let me talk to you about the anatomy of laziness, because if you are going to go to war with something, you need to understand it. You need to understand how it works. You need to understand its tactics, its favorite weapons, and the conditions under which it thrives. Laziness is not simply the absence of movement. It is far more sophisticated than that. In its most dangerous form, laziness doesn't look like lying on the couch doing nothing. In its most dangerous form, laziness looks like staying busy on the wrong things. It looks like activity without productivity. It looks like checking emails all day and calling that work. It looks like being constantly in motion but never making actual progress. That is the advanced form of laziness, and it is everywhere, and it is destroying people's potential on a massive scale. Think about how many hours a week the average person spends scrolling through their phone. Think about how many evenings go by in front of a screen when that same time could have been invested in a skill, in a relationship, in a project, in personal development. Now, I am not saying rest is wrong. Rest is essential. Recovery is a legitimate and necessary part of any great effort. But there is a profound difference between rest that renews you and escape that numbs you. The lazy self loves escape. It will offer you every justification in the world. You've had a hard day. You deserve this. You can work on that tomorrow. And all of those things sound reasonable in the moment, but stack enough of those moments together and you have a year. Stack enough of those years together and you have a life. And at the end of that life, you are left with the most painful question a person can face. What could I have done with all of that time? Let me tell you about the power of compounding, and I am not just talking about money, though the principle applies there magnificently. I am talking about daily choices. Every single day, you are either compounding your disciplines or compounding your neglect. Every day that you choose the harder right thing over the easier wrong thing, you are building. You are adding to a structure, and that structure grows. It becomes more solid. It becomes more impressive. It becomes more capable of holding greater weight, greater responsibility, greater achievement. But every day that you surrender to the lazy self, you are also compounding. You are building a different structure, a structure made of excuses and rationalizations and missed opportunities. And that structure also grows, and the longer it grows, the harder it becomes to tear down, because by then the habits have calcified, by then the patterns are deeply grooved. By then, the lazy self has become so comfortable in your home that it has moved into the master bedroom and put its name on the mailbox. This is why the war must begin today, not next week, not after the holidays, not when things slow down, today. Because the cost of delay is not neutral. Every day you wait is not just a day lost. Every day you wait, the lazy self gets a little more settled, a little more confident, a little more entrenched, and you get a little further from the person you are trying to become. Time is the one resource that does not replenish. Money lost can be made again. Relationships broken can sometimes be restored. Health damaged can sometimes be recovered. But time spent cannot be reclaimed. It is gone. And every morning you wake up with a slightly smaller account than you had the day before. That ought to create a sense of urgency in you. That ought to make you want to get after it with everything you have. Now let me give you one of the most powerful concepts I have ever encountered in the study of human excellence. The concept of the standard. Every person, whether they know it or not, is living according to a standard. That standard determines what you tolerate and what you refuse to tolerate. It determines what you accept from yourself and what you reject. It determines the ceiling on your performance and the floor below which you will not allow yourself to fall. Most people's standards have been set by their environment. They have been set by the people around them, by the culture they grew up in, by the habits they developed in childhood, by the expectations that others placed on them or failed to place on them. And for many people, that standard is far too low, far too accommodating to weakness, far too forgiving of underperformance. And when your standard is low, the lazy self operates within it comfortably because nothing about the standard challenges it. The first act of war against your lazy self is to raise your standard. Decide that you will no longer accept from yourself what you have been accepting. Decide that average is not good enough. Decide that mediocrity is not a destination but a warning. Decide that you are capable of more and that you will now begin to demand more from yourself. This is not about arrogance. This is about honoring the capacity that you were given. Because here is something I believe with absolute conviction. Every person who has ever drawn breath was given more capacity than they used. Every single one. No one has ever fully maximized their potential. The question is not whether you have more to give. The question is whether you will choose to give it. And this is where the war gets intensely personal. Because raising your standard means having an honest, unflinching conversation with yourself. It means looking at your daily habits without the filter of rationalization. It means asking yourself some uncomfortable questions. Is the way I spend my mornings moving me toward the life I want or away from it? Is the way I spend my evenings helping me build something or simply helping me escape from something? Are the relationships I am investing in lifting me or pulling me down? Is the content I am consuming expanding my mind or dulling it? These are not comfortable questions. The lazy self hates these questions. It will do everything in its power to redirect your attention away from them. It will remind you of how tired you are. It will point out that other people have it easier than you. It will suggest that you have already tried and it didn't work, so what is the point? Do not let it win that argument. Because here is the thing about the arguments the lazy self makes. They sound like wisdom. They dress themselves up in the language of practicality and self-care and realism. But when you examine them closely, when you hold them up to the light, you find that they are not wisdom at all. They are excuses wearing wisdom's clothing. And the ability to distinguish between a genuine reason and a disguised excuse is one of the most valuable skills a person can develop. A genuine reason says, I cannot do this right now because of a specific legitimate circumstance. An excuse says, I will not do this because I do not feel like it, wrapped in language that sounds more sophisticated. The lazy self is a master of the sophisticated excuse. It will construct elaborate justifications for why now is not the right time. And your job, your primary job in this war, is to see through those justifications every single time. Let me speak now about what I call the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. Both are painful. I want to be absolutely clear about that. Discipline is not comfortable. Getting up early when your body wants to sleep is not comfortable. Saying no to the easy pleasures so you can pursue the harder goal is not comfortable. Doing the difficult work day after day when no one is watching and no one is clapping for you is genuinely hard. I will never tell you otherwise. But here is the critical difference between the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. The pain of discipline is temporary. It is felt in the moment and then it passes. And on the other side of that temporary discomfort is growth, progress, accomplishment, and the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you did what you said you would do. The pain of regret is permanent. It is not felt in the moment of choice. It arrives later, sometimes years later, sometimes decades later, when you look at your life and realize what you gave up by choosing comfort over commitment. And when that pain arrives, there is nothing you can do with it. You cannot go back. You cannot choose differently. You can only sit with the weight of what might have been. That is the cruelest pain there is. So when you are lying in bed on a cold morning and every cell in your body is arguing for 5 more minutes, I want you to ask yourself this question. Which pain am I choosing? Am I choosing the temporary pain of getting up and doing what I said I would do? Or am I choosing the permanent pain of becoming someone who consistently betrays their own commitments? Because it is never just about the 5 minutes. It is never just about today. It is always about the person you are becoming through the accumulation of these daily choices. You become disciplined by making disciplined choices. You become lazy by making lazy choices. And the beauty of this, the genuinely beautiful thing about it, is that the choice is always yours. Nobody else decides. Your history doesn't decide. Your circumstances don't decide. You decide. Every single morning you decide. Now I want to talk about accountability. Because one of the great gifts you can give yourself in this war is the gift of a standard that exists outside your own head. Here is why. When the standard lives only in your own mind, the lazy self has direct access to it. And it is very good at renegotiating. It is very good at moving the goalposts while you are sleeping. You wake up, the goal has shifted just slightly, then a little more, then a little more. And before long, you have lowered your expectations so gradually that you barely notice the movement, but the destination has changed completely. When you introduce external accountability, whether that is a mentor, a coach, a committed partner, a mastermind group, or even a public commitment, you take that renegotiation power away from the lazy self. The standard now exists in a space where it cannot be quietly amended at 3 in the morning. It holds. And when it holds, you have to rise to meet it or face the consequence of others knowing you did not. I have always been a student of successful people, not just what they do, but how they think, how they structure their days, what they choose to focus on, what they consistently refuse to allow. And one of the things I have noticed, one of the things that is remarkably consistent across virtually all highly successful individuals is that they have developed a profound intolerance for their own excuses. They are not perfect. They have bad days. They feel lazy and tired and discouraged just like everyone else, but they have cultivated the ability to notice when the lazy self is talking and to say firmly and with conviction, not today. That is the skill, not the absence of laziness, because laziness is a pull that every human being feels. The skill is learning to feel that pull and choose differently. And like any other skill, it gets stronger with practice. This brings me to something I consider absolutely foundational in the conquest of the lazy self, the power of small daily victories. People often imagine that the war with their lazy self is one great dramatic battle, that there will be a moment, a turning point, a decisive day when they summon all their strength and defeat the enemy once and for all. It does not work that way. The war is won in small engagements, fought daily, sometimes hourly. Every time you choose the harder option, you win a small engagement. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when you do not feel like it, you win. Every time you close the phone and pick up the book. Every time you get to the gym when you had every excuse to stay home. Every time you sit down and do the work when distraction is calling. Those are all victories, and they matter enormously, not just for what they produce in the external world, but for what they build in your internal world. Because every small victory is a vote for the disciplined version of you. And the disciplined version of you becomes more real, more present, more powerful with every vote cast in its favor. I want you to think about identity for a moment, because I believe that identity is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. What you believe about who you are drives everything. If you believe deep in your core that you are the kind of person who keeps their word to themselves, you will keep your word to yourself. If you believe that you are disciplined, the discipline will come more naturally, not effortlessly. Nothing worthwhile is effortless, but more naturally. And the reverse is also true. If you believe deep in your core that you are someone who always gives up, who always finds an excuse, who can never quite follow through, that belief will be proved correct over and over again, not because it is true, but because you will act in accordance with it. The lazy self loves a limiting identity. It feeds off of it. It uses it as armor. So long as you believe you are fundamentally lazy, the lazy self is protected. It can always say, see, this is just who you are. The truth is, who you are is not fixed. It is not determined by your past. It is not written in your genes. It is not handed down by your family. Who you are is decided. It is chosen, and it is redecided every single day by the choices you make. So one of the most powerful things you can do in this war is to make a conscious, deliberate decision about the identity you are going to inhabit, not the identity of who you have been, the identity of who you are choosing to become, and then begin to act from that identity. Begin to make decisions as that person. Begin to ask yourself, what would the disciplined, ambitious, focused version of me do in this moment? And then do that, even if it feels unfamiliar, even if it feels like you are pretending. Because here is the secret. You are not pretending. You are practicing. And practice repeated over time becomes reality. Let me address something that I know many of you are thinking. You are thinking, Jim, I have tried to change. I have tried to build discipline. I have tried to get after it, and I always fall back into old patterns. And to that I say, welcome to being human. Welcome to the war, because falling back is not failure. Falling back is part of the process. The question is never whether you fall. The question is what you do when you are down. The lazy self wants you to treat a setback as confirmation. It wants you to say, see, I knew I couldn't do it. This proves I am not capable of change. Do not give it that. A setback is information, not identity. A stumble is not a fall. A fall is not the end. The end only comes when you decide to stay down. And that alone is a decision within your absolute control. Some of the greatest achievements in human history were built on a foundation of repeated failure. The men and women who changed the world were not people who succeeded the first time. They were people who got up every time they fell. They were people who refused to let the lazy self's narrative of defeat become their own. They kept going, not because it was easy, because they understood that the alternative, giving up, surrendering, settling for less than they were capable of, was a far greater cost than the temporary pain of continuing. Let me talk to you now about the morning. Because I believe the morning is the most important battlefield in this war. Whatever you do in the first hour of your day sets the tone for everything that follows. It establishes the precedent. It sends a signal, either to your disciplined self or your lazy self, about who is in charge today. When you wake up and immediately reach for your phone, you are handing command to distraction. You are telling your mind before it has even had a chance to settle that the outside world's agenda takes priority over your own. When you wake up and hit snooze, you are telling yourself that commitments are negotiable, that it is acceptable to begin the day by breaking a promise you made to yourself. These small moments of surrender at the beginning of the day have a cascading effect. Because the precedent has been set, the lazy self has already scored a victory, and it is not even 7 in the morning. But when you wake up and you do the hard thing first, when you get up, when you said you would get up, when you move your body, when you fill your mind with something that challenges and expands it, when you sit in quiet reflection and remind yourself of your purpose and your goals and your commitments, something shifts. You step into the day with momentum. You have already won a battle before most people have even opened their eyes. And that momentum is real. It carries. It compounds. A morning of discipline makes an afternoon of discipline more likely. A week of strong mornings makes a month of strong mornings more achievable. And a year of strong mornings, a year of choosing the harder right thing before your mind has had a chance to negotiate, will produce results that will genuinely astonish you. Now let me talk about environment, because one of the things I have learned in my years of study is that willpower, as powerful as it is, has limits. It is a resource. It can be depleted. And if you are relying on willpower alone to defeat your lazy self, you are fighting with one hand behind your back. The wiser strategy is to design your environment in a way that makes the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder. This is not cheating. This is intelligence. The craftsman does not blame his tools, but the craftsman also chooses his tools wisely. If you want to read more, put the book where you will see it. If you want to exercise more, sleep in your workout clothes if you have to. If you want to eat better, do not keep the wrong food in your house. If you want to work more productively, eliminate the distractions that pull you off course. Design a life where the path of least resistance leads to the behavior you want, not away from it. Because the lazy self will always take the path of least resistance. It is its nature. Your job is to redirect that path. Surround yourself with people who are winning the war. This is not something I say lightly. I say it because it is one of the most consistently powerful forces in human development. You become the average of the people you spend the most time with. Their habits, their attitudes, their energy, their standards, all of it is contagious. If the people around you are undisciplined, if they complain rather than act, if they celebrate average rather than demand excellence, that environment will work against you. It will make your war harder. But if you can find even 1 or 2 people who are genuinely committed to growth, who hold hold themselves to a high standard, who are doing the difficult work of becoming better, their influence will work in your favor. It will raise your waterline. It will make your standard feel more natural because it is reflected around you. Choose your associations with the same care you would choose a surgeon. Because the people around you are operating on the most important thing you have, your future. Let me speak to you about purpose, because I believe that all of the strategies in the world, all of the tactics and tools and disciplines and habits are ultimately insufficient if there is no deep, genuine, compelling reason behind them. Purpose is the fuel. Purpose is what gets you out of bed when the alarm goes off and every part of your body is arguing for surrender. Purpose is what carries you through the difficult stretches when results are slow and doubt is loud. Purpose is what makes the sacrifice feel worthwhile because you can see clearly what you are sacrificing for. Without purpose, discipline is a grind. With purpose, discipline becomes a privilege because you understand that every disciplined choice is moving you towards something that matters, something larger than today's comfort, something that will outlast this morning's resistance. So I want to ask you a question, and I want you to take it seriously. What are you fighting for? Not in general terms. Specifically, what is the life that you are trying to build? What does it look like? Who is in it? What does it feel like to wake up inside it? Get clear on that. Write it down. Make it specific and vivid and real, because a vague dream is not enough to sustain you through the daily battles of this war. You need something concrete. You need a vision that is so clear and so compelling that on the hard mornings, when the lazy self is making its most persuasive arguments, you can hold that vision up against the excuse and say, "This is what I am protecting," and the excuse will shrink. The vision, when it is vivid enough, creates what I call purposeful discontent. It makes you appropriately dissatisfied with where you are, not in a way that makes you miserable, but in a way that makes you motivated. It creates a productive tension between where you are and where you know you could be. And that tension, properly channeled, is one of the most powerful forces for change that exists in human psychology. Most people either have no vision, so they have nothing to be discontent about, or they have a vision but refuse to sit with the discomfort it creates, so they suppress it with distraction and comfort. Neither approach will get you to where you want to go. The approach that works is to hold the vision clearly and use the discomfort it creates as energy. Let it propel you. Let it make you restless in the most productive sense of that word. Now I want to address time, because time is the arena in which this war is fought, and the way you manage your time tells the truth about your priorities more clearly than anything you say about them. You can tell me all day long that your health is a priority, but if you do not allocate time to it, it is not a priority. It is a wish. You can tell me that building your business is the most important thing in your life. But if you spend your evenings watching television and scrolling through your phone, your priorities are written in your calendar, not your words. And the lazy self is a master at filling time with things that feel legitimate but produce nothing of lasting value. It is brilliant at creating the illusion of productive busyness. So one of the most important habits you can develop is the habit of auditing your time, of looking honestly and without defense at where your hours actually go and asking yourself whether that allocation reflects who you say you want to be. I have heard every reason why people do not have enough time. I am too busy, I have responsibilities, life doesn't slow down, and I understand, genuinely. Many people are carrying enormous loads. I am not dismissing that, but I am also going to tell you something that might be uncomfortable. The busiest people I have ever known, the people whose schedules were the most demanding, who had the most on their plate, were also among the most disciplined. Because they understood that time was their scarcest resource, they were ferocious about how they spent it. They did not allow drift. They did not allow hours to slip by unaccounted for. They protected their time with the kind of vigilance you would apply to your most precious possession, because time is your most precious possession, and the lazy self knows that, which is why it is so persistent in trying to get you to give it away. Let me give you a practice. At the end of each day, take 10 minutes and account for how you spent your time. Not in judgment, but in honest assessment. Where did the hours go? How many of them moved you forward? How many of them were genuine, necessary rest? And how many of them were quiet surrenders to the lazy self? Do this consistently, and you will begin to see the patterns. You will begin to see where the lazy self has its grip, and once you can see it clearly, you can address it deliberately. You cannot change what you do not measure. You cannot win a war against an enemy you refuse to look at directly. Let me talk about the relationship between action and motivation, because most people have this backwards. They wait to feel motivated before they take action. They wait for inspiration. They wait to be in the right mood. They wait until they feel ready, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait. because the feeling they are waiting for never arrives on command. Motivation does not precede action in the way most people imagine. More often, action precedes motivation. You start even when you do not feel like starting. You begin even when it feels wrong. You take the first step even when your energy is low and your enthusiasm is absent. And something happens. Momentum begins to build. Your body warms up. Your mind engages. The work starts to pull you forward. And what felt impossible 3 minutes earlier starts to feel possible, then manageable, then even energizing. This is one of the most reliable experiences in the life of a disciplined person. The start is always the hardest part. Once you have started, the battle is largely won. The lazy self knows this. It is why it works so hard to prevent the start. It does not have to defeat you once you have momentum. It just has to keep you from beginning. And so it offers you reasons to delay. It offers you conditions that must be met before you can properly begin. I will start when I have a better plan. I will start when I have more energy. I will start when things are less hectic. I will start when I feel more confident. All of those conditions are moving targets. They will never all be perfectly in place. The right moment does not arrive fully assembled. It is created by the act of beginning. So begin. Begin imperfectly. Begin without all the answers. Begin without confidence or certainty or ideal conditions. Just begin, and let the beginning generate the momentum. And let the momentum carry you forward until the beginning feels like a distant memory, and what you are building is undeniably real. Now here is something I want you to carry with you. The concept of the compound effect applied to character. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when you did not feel like doing it, you become more trustworthy to yourself. And this matters enormously, because the person you need to trust most in the world, above any other person, above any institution, above any authority, is yourself. When you trust yourself, when you know from experience that you will follow through on your commitments, you begin to operate from a place of confidence that is not borrowed from others. It is yours. It is earned. You step into challenges with a different quality of belief, not arrogance, but earned confidence, the quiet certainty that comes from having been tested and having chosen well. And the opposite is also true. Every time you break a promise to yourself, every time you say you will do something and then do not, every time you hit snooze when you said you would get up, or skip the gym when you said you would go, or quit early when you said you would finish, you erode your self-trust. And when your self-trust is eroded, your confidence is hollow. You may appear confident on the outside, but inside you know the truth. You know that when things get difficult, there is a real possibility you will fold, because you have folded before. And that knowledge is corrosive. It works against you in every challenge you face. This is why the war with your lazy self is not just about productivity or achievement or external results. It is about the quality of your relationship with yourself. It is about becoming someone you respect, someone you can rely on, someone who, when they give their word, honors it completely. I want to speak to you now about patience in the context of this war, because one of the ways the lazy self wins is by pointing at the distance between where you are and where you want to be and saying, you see, you will never get there. Look how far it is. Look how long it will take. And in the face of that argument, many people give up. They put down the tools. They stop the building. Because the gap between the present reality and the desired outcome feels so vast that continuing seems futile. Do not fall for this. Do not let the lazy self weaponize the gap against you. The gap is not a reason to stop. The gap is the reason you started. It is the space in which your growth happens. Every step you take across that gap is a step of transformation. And transformation by its nature takes time. You cannot rush it. You cannot skip the middle. You cannot go from beginning to completion without enduring the long, unglamorous, often discouraging process in between. The middle is where most people quit. The beginning is exciting, the end is glorious, but the middle is just work. Day after day, often without visible progress, often without applause, often without any external confirmation that what you are doing is worth the effort. The lazy self is most dangerous in the middle, because the middle is when fatigue has set in and the initial enthusiasm has faded and the destination still feels distant and the temptation to quit is at its most persuasive. You must decide before you reach the middle that you will not quit there. You must prepare yourself for the long stretch. You must understand that the discomfort and the doubt and the slowness are not signs that you have chosen the wrong path. They are simply the price of the worthwhile thing you are building. Some of the most beautiful structures in human history took decades to build, not because the builders were slow, because the structures were great. And greatness takes time. Greatness asks for patience and persistence and the willingness to keep working in the absence of immediate reward. If you are building something great with your life, something worthy of your capacity and your potential and the years you have been given, then you must be prepared to be patient with the process, not passive, actively patient, working every day consistently with focus and intention, trusting that the compounding will reveal itself in time, because it will. It always does. The discipline you practice today will show up in your life. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but it will show up. And when it does, you will understand why the war was worth fighting. Let me tell you something about what happens when you start winning consistently. When you start defeating your lazy self in the small daily battles with regularity, something changes. Not just in what you produce and what you achieve, something changes in how you experience yourself and the world around you. There is a quality of aliveness that comes from living with intention. There is a deep satisfaction, not the shallow satisfaction of pleasures, but the profound satisfaction of effort and growth that begins to permeate your daily life. You start to feel capable in a way that is fundamentally different from how you felt before, because you are not just capable in theory. You are capable in practice, you have demonstrated it to yourself repeatedly, and that demonstration changes everything. People who do not know you will notice something different about you. Not because you have become arrogant, because you have become grounded, because there is a solidity to a person who has earned their own respect, a certainty of movement, a clarity of purpose. The lazy self cannot produce this. Only the disciplined, committed, purposeful version of you can produce it. And once you taste it, truly taste it, you will not want to go back. The lazy self will still show up. It will still make its arguments. But by then, you will have enough victories under your belt that you can look at it, acknowledge it, and walk right past it, because you know who you are, and you know who you are not. Let me give you a set of commitments, not suggestions, commitments. Things that, if you actually do them, if you actually hold to them, will fundamentally alter the outcome of this war. First, commit to keeping the promises you make to yourself with the same seriousness that you keep promises made to others, because you are worth that. Your future is worth that. The life you are building deserves that level of commitment. Second, commit to doing the important work first. Before the distractions, before the easy tasks, before the comfortable activities, do the thing that matters most every single day. Because if you wait until later, the lazy self will have negotiated it away. Third, commit to auditing your time weekly. Look at where your hours went and be honest about whether that allocation is building the life you want or confirming the life you are trying to escape. Fourth, commit to not complaining. This one is more important than it might appear. Complaining is one of the primary activities of the lazy self. It is the lazy self's way of feeling engaged without doing anything productive. Every minute you spend complaining is a minute you are not spending solving, building, growing, or improving. Replace every complaint with a decision. What are you going to do about the thing you are tempted to complain about? That question alone will change your relationship with challenges in a profound way. Fifth, commit to protecting your morning. The first hour of your day is yours. Use it for what matters to you most, not for the world's agenda, not for social media, not for news, for your health, your mind, your purpose. Sixth, commit to finishing what you start. The lazy self loves half-finished projects. They are trophies of abandoned potential. Every time you do not finish what you start, you reinforce the narrative that you are not a person who follows through. Finish the thing, even if it takes longer than you planned, even if it turns out differently than you imagined. Finish it, and let the completion become part of your identity. And finally, commit to taking this war seriously. Not in a grim, joyless way, but in the way that a person takes seriously the one life they have been given to live. Because that is what this is. It is not a rehearsal. It is not a practice run. This is the actual performance, the actual life, and you are in it right now. Every day that passes is a page written in the story of what you did with your time on this earth. What do you want those pages to say? That you fought and grew and built and became, or that you intended to and someday but not quite yet? The war with your lazy self is the most important war you will ever fight, not because external achievement is the highest value, but because who you become in the process of fighting it, the character, the discipline, the resilience, the self-trust, the purposefulness, those things are the highest expression of a human life. Those things are what allow you to show up fully for the people you love, what allow you to make a contribution that outlasts your time here, what allow you to look at yourself in the mirror, not with vanity, but with the quiet, earned satisfaction of a person who gave it everything they had. You have the capacity. I believe that without reservation. Every person who has ever lived and breathed and dreamed has the capacity. The question has never been about capacity. The question has always been about choice, and the choice is in front of you, not at some future date when the conditions are better. Right now, in this moment, with everything that is present in your life exactly as it is. You can choose the lazy self, and it will promise you comfort but deliver regret. Or you can choose the disciplined, committed, purposeful version of yourself, and it will ask for discomfort today and deliver a life you are genuinely proud of. Make the choice. Begin the war. Fight it every single day. Win the small battles. Compound the victories. Raise the standard. Honor the commitment and do not stop. Not when it is hard. Not when you are tired. Not when the lazy self makes its most compelling arguments. Not when the gap seems too wide. Not when progress seems too slow. Do not stop. because on the other side of your persistence is the person you have always been capable of becoming. And that person, that fully expressed, fully realized, disciplined, and purposeful version of you, is worth every battle you will ever have to fight to bring them into existence. The war starts today, and today you win.